Jen Cassell here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here to do a tutorial today. I am doing a tutorial on foam roses. I recently had both Patty from Mommy and Me Crafts and Erica from Scrap Diva Designs ask me to do a tutorial, and trust me, when those two ladies ask you to do a tutorial, you do it. So here I am. We're going to focus on foam today. So there's definitely a different kind of foam that I use. It's not your standard craft foam. This is just a small piece of craft foam that I had laying around in my stash. There's this size, and then this is another pretty standard size. Both are thinner craft foams, but what we use for foam flowers, at least the ones that I'm doing today, you're going to want a really thin foam. This is called Foamiran. It is less than 1 millimeter in thickness, and what's really cool about it is when you heat it, you can mold it and it'll stay in that shape. It comes in a ton of different colors. We're going to be focusing primarily on white today because I wanted to show you a few different coloring techniques with it, but like I said, you can get in just about any color. If you want brighter colors, darker colors, you are going to want to buy that colored foam. When you're using white, it's, the way the material soaks up the ink or whatever kind of medium that you're using on it automatically lightens it up. So you get some really soft pastel-y colors. One of the techniques that I use most for inking is gelatos. I've had the best luck with gelatos with their color. It really seems to hold its brightness pretty well on the foam. They're fairly easy to use and they're cheap. I find them to be a little darker and a little more color holding than pastels. Just your typical pastel will definitely work in this situation. I'm sure you probably have something like this sitting in your craft room or maybe your kid's art stash. But this is really good for coloring foam. It just doesn't seem to keep the bright colors as well. So I usually use gelatos, or I've had good luck with distress inks too. Distress inks, the brighter the better because they do fade once again. But you can keep a pretty good color. This is actually the pickled raspberry I used in this. So, it stays pretty well. But you are also going to need either dies or your Cricut. I'm sure you can cut it on your silhouette. I'm just not as familiar. I just got a silhouette for Christmas, so I haven't been using it as much as my Cricut. But I cut Foamiran all the time on my Cricut, and it's just the EVA setting, I believe it's called. I will double check that for you, and I'll leave it in the comments. But dies is something most people are going to have around, and I was going to show you a few of the dies that I go back to time and time again. Now, I have a lot of floral dies, but these are the ones that I'm using all the time for them. Most popular for me are these ones here, and this is a Heartfelt Creations die, I believe. For this tutorial purpose, this is another die that I use. I think this is a Spellbinder one, but we're going to use this one because when I'm working with foam, I actually prefer to not have a center to it. Usually because I'm adding stamens and I want to keep that circle nice and tight, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I do prefer a die that does not have a hole in the center of it. This is one of my favorite dies to use. It's kind of a hydrangea, it looks like, when stacked together. Another one that I come back to all the time. The Ariana Blooms die, which you can kind of see in here. This is one that I like to use all the time. This was made with an Ariana Blooms. This one as well. Just a super pretty flower. 6 petals versus the 5. Just kind of gives you a slightly different look. And then I also go back to the classic rose. I'm actually going to be using this one to cut out for you today. Tricks of the trade. Obviously, you're going to need your foam, You're going to need something to color it with if you so choose, but because it's a heat moldable foam, you're also going to want a heat source. So for mine, I just use an iron. Quick and easy. This is an old iron. I use it solely in my craft room, so it's kind of beat up, but it's perfect for the foam. Or you could just use your standard heat tool, which you have for like your embossing or something like that. The reason that I use the iron is it's a lot quicker, and I'm usually mass producing flowers when I do make them. So your iron, you're going to want to set it to about a medium heat I use. Low really just won't give you enough heat to go around. High, you will scorch the Foamiran. But you're also going to want, I usually have a pair of tweezers handy. I use these silicone cups to put the foam on the iron. And you're probably going to want some sort of stylus or, flower making tool of some sort that has a round ball at the end, and that'll help cup the flowers. But when I'm doing flowers, I don't just stop at the Foamiran. I actually do use a couple different kinds of really thick foam. And this is what I use to shape my flowers on. You can buy mats. I think Heartfelt Creations makes some. There's just a few floral making masks or mats out there. You can even use the ones for gum paste for like baking and everything. Same difference, honestly. But for me, I just use the cheap stuff. This is just some foam protecting that I had gotten something shipped in, and I will save this kind of foam because it's great for making flowers. So for my adhesive, I usually stick with a hot glue. I like the instantaneous bond that it provides, and it does give you just a little bit of wiggle room when you need it. So let's die cut some foam. The nice thing about this foam is when I cut it, I will cut it into fourths. You will be able to fit 4 sheets of Foamiran along with your die through your die cutting machine. I'm going to use my Sizzix today, but once again, if you're using a Cricut, obviously you can only cut a 1 layer of foam at a time, but for your die cutting machine, this is fine. And if you don't have either of them, cut yourself out a flower. I've never tried punching through Foamiran. That would be new for me. Maybe it'll work. I'm not sure. You can try it, but you could even just cut out a flower shape if you don't have anything on hand. Okay, so I've cut my flowers out. I have this larger one here and then a more medium-sized one. When I'm making the flowers, I usually do them at least 2 layers. Obviously, the larger the flower, the more dense you want the flower, the more layers you're going to add. So for these ones, I think I'm just going to add 2 large and maybe this medium. I think I'm gonna just keep these 2 here. Yeah, we'll do 2 of those and then we'll do 1 small one like that. All right, so I'm going to add some color. First, I'm gonna use the gelatos. To use the gelatos to put the color on, all I do is use a baby wipe. So my baby wipes are actually kind of dried out. That's absolutely fine. I just re-wet them with a little bit of water. They're perfect for crafting. I'm gonna take my gelato and just throw a little bit on my baby wipe. And then I'm gonna come in here and then just kind of add a bit of color. And as you can see, it's coming out pretty light. You can add layers of color. That's totally up to you. I am keeping this one kind of light. I like the more minty green. And I do both sides. These flowers are really dimensional, so you're gonna see both sides of the leaf in most cases when you're making these. And as you can see, I'm not really being precise with the color. I like a little bit of color variation. This is what I have when I'm done coloring my first set of flowers. I'm just gonna set that aside. All right, I've wiped down my desk a little bit. When you're inking, try to pull your color up before moving to the next color because it will bleed. I was planning on using some yellow and I didn't want any of the green in there. So I'm just gonna pull this over. And for this one, I am going to use some Distress ink. So grab whatever you like to apply your Distress ink with. I like to use a brush. I'm just gonna do a little yellow in the center. Now, since I'm keeping this flower white, I'm not worried about doing the center on the bottom layer of the petals. So I'm gonna set this over here. This one, I'm gonna do this coral that I have. It's abandoned coral. I thought that could be kind of cool, like a nice orangey color. This one, I'm gonna leave the tips of the flower white, but I'm also gonna bring that coral almost right out. I've cleaned up my work surface, I've inked my flowers, and I'm ready to apply some heat. So this is something that I've already pre-cut out. I kind of wanted you guys to see this on a larger flower first. And as you can see with this one, I did the entire flower in pink and then just did the yellow center on it. This is that 5-petal flower die that I was showing you earlier. It's just a little bigger and I want you to be able to kind of see the detail a little bit more in this. So I grabbed my silicone cap here and my iron is already heated up. I am just going to pop my flower on here. And as you can see, the flower is kind of starting, you see. You can see that it's kind of starting to pull up and cup. That's when you know that it's done. And just let it drop. And I'm just gonna go in. You could leave it just like this, but to give the flowers a little dimension, I'm just gonna start twisting those petals. I don't really give it a hard twist by any means. It's kind of a loose twist, and then I just let it fall. Concentrate on the tip of your petals, and you're probably gonna wanna go in and give it a twist in the opposite direction as well. And I'm just gonna continue with each of these. So this is what I'm left with, okay? I've got 3 petals. I can once again just leave it like this and get out my shaping tool and go from there. But sometimes I like to loosen those petals up and I just give it a little stretch right at the base. And I'm using my thumb to kind of cup it a little bit. I do that right at the base though. I try to stay away from the petal's edge so that it still has a lot of that really cool texture towards the tip of the petal, which is really what you're gonna see. Now I'm just gonna set this aside and I'm gonna do my other flower real quick. I'm gonna pop it on here. I think I'm gonna let that heat just a little more.
Once again, just twisting those petals.
It may seem kind of tedious and time consuming at first, but you'll get really fast at this. This is another petal or another flower that I've done. I'm gonna do this one. I'm gonna heat this real quick.
I'm just
Show
gonna lay
you
it
a
open
little
like this.
different technique with this one.
And bring it down.
And on this one, as you can see, I am not twisting these. Thing with this one, I am not going to twist this one. I'm just gonna let it cup. And as you can see, when you're applying heat to this, it is shrinking a little bit. So keep that in mind when you're cutting your flowers out. I'm just gonna do a few more flowers real quick. See, I'm just adding a little more texture this way. So I'm using a harder twist. When I twist it, I'm really applying some pressure. But when I heat it, I'm only heating one petal at a time so that it's really warm when I'm twisting my petal and adding that texture. As you can see, even if I decided to not pull these, that's still a really pretty flower. Really, really pretty. But I like to kind of pull it just a little bit.
I am gonna leave a little more shape.
As you can see, I kind of tore this one a little bit. That's okay, that's okay. You're really not even gonna notice. These flowers are super forgiving. When I really am kind of using some pressure and twisting these petals. You can see I did not add a lot of ink, at least not uniformly, to this. Now I'm going to show you how to do your centers. I like to use stamens myself. Obviously you could use some of the foam balls like I did on that one here. You use whatever you want, but I'm going to show you how to do stamens because I did have a question on that. All right, so grab your stamens. I It depends on the size of the flower that you're creating as to how many stamens that you're going to want to use. Also the look too. For a big flower like this, I usually start with about 5 or 6. You are going to want to kind of even them up a little bit and twist them around your finger just like this. Sorry, my fingers are a mess because I'm all ink right now. Next, you're going to grab some wire, and all I did was just cut a length of wire, folded it in half, make sure, use a pair of needle nose pliers to really make sure that that is a tight end at the top. And then you're just going to thread your stamens through to the top, just like this. So it's going to leave you, here's the ends of your wire, here's the top of your wire, holding that loop of stamens. Now, grab your flower, find the center, and just poke a hole through. The Foamiran, obviously you're going to find out that Foamiran can kind of tear pretty easily, so be gentle with it. It goes through without a problem. And then pull it down. So you're going to have a little bit on this side, and then push your stamens through to where you want it to go down and cut them off. That's it. Okay, grab some hot glue. I'm just gonna add a little tab right here. Now I have my silicone pad. I like the silicone because nothing's gonna stick to it. I put a large piece of foam underneath it, and then I'm just gonna press my flower down onto the foam. And I have a tendency to just kind of gather the petals and really press it down in there. Leave it. Let the glue dry. Move on to your next flower. I'm gonna grab, let me see. I'm gonna do this hot pink little one right here next. I'm gonna grab that wire, thread my stamen through, make sure they're kind of even, and poke it on through. Now, if you're having a hard time getting through your hot glue, maybe, you know, just having a little bit of a hard time with it, take a pokey tool, take a needle, whatever you got laying around, and poke your hole for the center. Just make sure that you're not giving it a large hole, because it really can kind of tear and rip when you're doing this, and then the stamens will fall out, and it's just not a good look. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. Now for this one, I think I am just going to use, this is one of the larger stamens that you can get. I like to do this a lot for some of my smaller flowers. I just take one little center right there, use some hot glue on the very end, and set it inside. It's pretty easy to poke it through, which I'm going to do so that I can kind of pull up on this first layer here and pinch as I'm putting it through. And this is just going to kind of raise that center for you, that center flower. You can even, if you wanted to add a little more dimension, I'm just going to pop a little hot glue on there and hot glue that base so that you really get a nice tall flower that kind of cups up. Play with it. Play with it. This is a super, super easy technique. And like I said, look at how these just come off the silicone. That's why I like to use a silicone pad for all of this. But I hope you like this tutorial. Ask me any questions you might have in the comments. I will try to get back to you. Once again, I will link where I get some of my foam from, and I would love to see what you've created with this. Check back. I am going to do a paper flower tutorial in the very near future. So I hope you like Foamiran 101, and maybe you can try a new technique or a new material. See you in the next crafty video. Bye.